Hello and welcome back. We have arrived at the penultimate episode of Series 12, Ascension of the Cybermen. Cybermen, not Cybermen, but on this episode, I think a lot was riding on this episode for a lot of people because it's the first proper Cyberman story for the Chibnall era. Haunted Villa Diodati is a Cyberman story, but it's not a proper one, if you know what I mean. This story is the second finale in the Chibnall era. The Battle of Ranskola of Kolos was regarded by many to be the worst series finale of Doctor Who. I kind of agree with that because it was disappointing. So my expectations were actually pretty low for this story because I knew that there were a lot of good ideas being be thrown into this two-parter, and obviously we've only seen the first part, so I can't really speak for all of it just yet, but a lot of it seems confused to me. A lot of it seems a bit like it doesn't fit all together at the moment because this is the first part. But if I was to judge it based on this part as a two-parter, it is a predictable. There's a lot going on, and it does have that large cast consequence of having not only a large companions, group of companions, and a large cast, and there's just so much going on, and so many characters. I'm grateful that it is a two-parter because I don't know if it would be able to work even as well as it does if it wasn't, because there's going to be a lot explained in the next part, I'm sure, but whether it will all gel, I don't know, because as at the moment, I don't think it will gel. I didn't think it would gel before I went into this. But I'm going to go into full spoilers now, because that was my sort of non-spoiler thoughts for the Ascension of the Cybermen. But I'm going to start off by talking about the characters and what I think is going to happen, because there were a lot of disappointments here for me. I'm not going to lie. I think it's a solid story overall, but there were a lot of disappointments here for me, personally. Oh, the companions. What did I make of the companions and the Doctor this week? Yaz once again shone through in this episode. So did Ryan, to an extent. I don't know. I feel like Ryan sort of got separated from Yaz and Ryan, kept with the Doctor, and then just didn't really do anything actually after they got separated. It was more up to the Doctor and the kid and the young kid who was with her from His Dark Materials, because I think it's from His Dark Materials. I think he plays a kid that sort of doesn't get it acknowledged again or explained, but there's a second series of His Dark Materials, so that's going to probably get picked up. But Graham is a bit of a background character. He has some interesting moments of sort of flirtations with the actress who plays a character. I know the actress is from the Sarah Jane Adventure. She was in one of the best Sarah Jane Adventure stories, Goodbye Sarah Jane Smith, or is it Goodbye Sarah Jane? I think it's just Goodbye Sarah Jane, but she was in that, and she had some flirtatious moments with Graham, I think. I see a spark there, but Graham, I'm worried for Graham, I'm not going to lie. Yaz says, "You've come a long way, Graham," and I was like, oh no, please don't say you're foreshadowing his end. I just don't know. They kind of felt distant from the Doctor, and I think they have their entire time on the show. I think they've always felt distant from the Doctor, which is something that I don't think we've had in New Who that often. So maybe it's why we're not so warming to it. But in Classic Who, I think you definitely found that certain Barbara and Ian didn't feel particularly close to the Doctor. They felt quite distant, particularly because the Doctor had Susan, so they would talk to each other that way, whereas these companions definitely feel like they don't know the Doctor, and I don't think the Doctor really knows them, and there's probably a lack of chemistry for that. But I think the companions by themselves do work better together, and then the Doctor works better by herself. I don't know, really, it's just been a bit of a roller coaster, and I guess I'm only saying this because I think next week could be the last episode for maybe one or two of these companions. I don't think we'll lose the whole lot. I think we may lose one, but I know a lot of people thought Ryan was going to be upgraded because there was him on that cyber ship. It turns out that's not a conversion unit. They didn't really do much with body horror in this episode. I think a lot of people were kind of hoping there'd be a lot of cyber body horror in this story because World Enough and Time was so full of it, but it didn't end up happening. But I think the companions were underused, and the Doctor really didn't the Doctor sort of led the group, but didn't have as much an impact as she has had in previous episodes, like in Villa of Diodati and Fugitive Vigidoon. She just felt like she was there, sorting things out, basically. She was obviously the leader, but I think I definitely got more authoritative sort of Doctor-like, in terms of a performance from the person who was in the Sarah J Adventures. I can't remember her name. Sort of the leader of the surviving humans. I definitely got more Doctor vibes from her, which I thought was interesting, because she played basically an alternative Sarah Jane in the Sarah Jane Adventures, so she was supposed to be, in a way, an actress of equal caliber to Elizabeth Sladen, who was leading her own show. So she would have had, if, say, Sarah Jane had died in that situation, she would have had to lead the gang. So I definitely got that kind of same sort of vibe that I got in that story here as well, but we'll get to her later on. But the point I'm trying to get across is that I didn't really feel that from the Doctor, if you know what I mean. I didn't think she was particularly authoritative. She was just sort of there dealing with the problems. Let's talk about the Cybermen in this story. There's a lot to talk about from the Cybermen in this story. They do have a presence in this story. I think they firmly rooted in this story. We also get a bit of story for what I assume is Ashat, but it's not really explained, because I'm assuming it's going to get explained in terms of next week. But there's this kid who grows up. He's called Brendan. He's found abandoned, and that sort of mirrors what happens to this Cyberman, because we learn that this Cyberman was sort of discarded and unfinished. Sort of like I guess the best way I can think of is the opening of Super Ted. It's a cartoon show from a long time ago. I watched it on YouTube. But in the opening of that, you have all this various teddy bears being made, and then you'd have this one this one teddy bear that was sort of didn't have his sound chip working, so he was discarded. So I'm guessing that has an effect on him. I think maybe his emotional inhibitator, or something like that. Sort of maybe, I think, in the same way that Super Ted's voice box doesn't work, maybe his emotional inhibitor doesn't work. And maybe that's why he's stressing about being stabilised. I think although he, for me, this Cyberman, although he's very much for the Cyberman cause, I think he feels like he's not ready to let go of his emotion. And we see flashbacks from his life before, presumably with his wife. Well, not his wife, his mother and his father, and his life as a police officer, I'm guessing. At least that's what I think it is. You see that life, and then you see when he gets shot and falls down that cliff. I think you see how maybe he's been affected by that, and sort of maybe is fearing death, and maybe that's why he did join the ranks of the Cybermen. I think it's probably what is the intention there, but it's not really built on, because we don't really know what it all means in context of the story. I guess you have left to assume, because Ashad doesn't really, because it's just flashbacks, so we don't know if it's necessarily Ashad's flashbacks. It might be just general flashbacks towards Earth before the cyber attacks. But the new Cyberman design, the actual clean version, I think that's better. I think it looks a bit more imposing. While I think that the Ashad Cyberman looks imposing, it doesn't, particularly in shots from this episode, it doesn't really look like it's there, and it just looks a bit clunky and a bit worn. It's a bit like the Resolution Dalek, and I don't really like the Resolution Dalek. Like, I think it just doesn't really work. It just looks a bit odd to me. But yeah, it was nice to have the RTD Cyberman come back, although I did kind of wonder why they were back. I mean, surely it would be better just to have two rusted versions of this Cyberman. It's never really explained. I mean, surely if this was a Cyber Wars, it clearly takes place many years in the future, and if you remember in Nightmare in Silver, there's a reference to the Great Cyber Wars. So is it the same Cyber War? Because in that episode they were talking about the Nightmare in Silver Cybermen. So why is it not the Nightmare in Silver Cybermen that's with Ashad? Is my questions. I did like the floating around bits of Cyberman. I thought that was very effective. A nice cold open to the episode as well, explaining the Cyber Wars. I think I would like it if it was the Cyber Wars from Nightmare in Silver, because it would add that extra bit of context and a nice little bit of Whovian lore, a nice gap filled, I think. But I think the Cybermen are probably the best part of this story because there is a lot going on and it doesn't all mesh together. I think Ashad's flashbacks, they're never really explained. So in this part, it doesn't mesh together, but I assume in part 2 we'll have something that meshes the whole story together, along with the sort of portal thing that leads to Gallifrey, which I'm very interested to learn how that fits into the story. In my opinion, I don't think it will, because I don't think any of these story arcs, I don't see how the Ruth Doctor and the Cybermen are all going to merge together. And I felt like a lot of the time though, when they got to the cyber ship, I kind of felt like a lot of it was predictable as well with the Cybermen. But that's because I've watched a lot of Cybermen Who. At this point, there are only so many stories you could do with the Cybermen that I'm not really sure if there is anything else you could do with them. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to talk about the guest cast now. Okay, so here we have the guest cast. As I said before, the leader, the girl trying to fix the ship, the woman there, she's very authoritative. I think she definitely does a good job to lead the group. She's very doctory in a way. I know a lot of people were saying on Twitter that, oh, maybe she's another secret incarnation of the Doctor, like Jo Martin was. I think I'm very grateful that she didn't have many scenes with the Doctor, because I would worry that there would be a similar situation to Jo Martin or what's her name? Nikola Tesla, the guy who played him, Goran Vishnik. I would kind of worry if that sort of similar situation would happen, where she often gets overshadowed by her guest cast, because this actress is a very strong one. She definitely proved herself in Goodbye Sarah Jane to be of a similar caliber to Elizabeth Sladen. So to put her up against someone who, in my opinion, Jodie Whittaker is nowhere near up to the caliber of Elizabeth Sladen, could be a problem. But they don't really spend too much time together. I think she definitely does a good job to lead the gang. I think her and Yaz have some sort of clash in their opinions about survival, and how Yaz is more optimistic, but she's sort of like, oh yeah, we're gonna die, and so is the other two survivors on the ship. So to have that kind of person lead the ship is a very good character. I see most promise in her than the rest of the guest cast. I thought a lot of the guest cast, because a lot of the guest cast sort of gets killed off at the start, so a lot of them don't get really used. There is another character, a sort of Gandalf-like character, who's guarding this sort of gateway to Gallifrey. I did kind of see that coming, if I'm honest. I was like, I kind of hope they don't go with that, but I can see how that would work. I remember thinking that. And then when the Master popped through, it was just bloody obvious. I was just thinking, what was going through your head? Because it just doesn't work with me. I'm just like, you have this story with the Cybermen, and then you just gotta throw in Gallifrey. I hope there is a decent enough connection. I feel like there probably won't be, and it'll just be two different stories running alongside each other. I just didn't think it was a good cliffhanger. I know a lot of people were like, there was a lot of things on Twitter saying this story ends with the mother of all cliffhangers, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be big, it's gonna be epic, and then it was just the Master again. I was like, you see, I think this is probably, in my opinion, a sort of weak story. It's not as bad as Battle of Ranskorav Kolos, but I'm gonna summarise now. But I think the Gandalf character who was guarding the pole, so he was quite nice. He sacrificed his life. Well, I say his life, he didn't die. He sacrificed any other human contact with anyone else. I think it was a nice character as well. I hope we get to see more of him, because he didn't get much to do, but he seemed endearing. So in conclusion, what did I make of Ascension of the Cybermen? So far, I do think it's a better finale than Battle of Ranskorav Kolos. I think it's better than Wedding of River Song. I think it's a solid finale so far. I'm just worried, there have been worse finales. There have been more disappointing endings. But I feel like it's going to be a hellbent, in the same way that the Doctor will return to Gallifrey, and it'll all be disappointing answers, and it'll just be disappointment overall. I feel like I just don't feel this story. Like with Spyfall, I got a certain feeling. I felt more excited for part 2, and part 2 delivered. But here I'm feeling a bit flat. I'm feeling a bit, like, I predicted this. I predicted anything to do with the Cybermen. I've been like, yeah, I've predicted it. Like, you jump on the cyber ship. Oh yeah, she's gonna stumble around. There's gonna be a cyber army. Nothing to do with the Cybermen has felt original. Which is why I am kind of more interested in the Gallifrey bit, but I just don't think it's gonna gel. I don't think it's gonna work together. Like, particularly, Chris Chibnall, like, said in previews and stuff, said, like, oh yeah, we're setting up a lot for Series 13, so I think this Timeless Child thing is going to be the thing that sort of runs through Series 11, 12, and 13. Much like, in a way, the Silence and the Kavarian chapter, the sort of Kavarian chapter type thing ran through the 11th Doctor's era. I think he's trying to, like, Chris Chibnall's trying to go for that kind of thing that will run through the era, but I just don't see it gelling in this finale. I don't see it working with the Cybermen. The Cybermen all feel distant from, like, anything to do with Gallifrey or the Ruth Doctor. And I just don't want another Cyberman finale. Because I think it's too soon. Much like I thought it was with the Master, it was too soon to bring them back after their epic final outing with Peter Capaldi. And it sort of feels one note in comparison to that. I think a lot of effort went into that 2-part finale with Peter Capaldi and Bill Potts. And this sort of just feels a bit lazy and running on notes and points from other Cyberman stories. Like, there's potential for this to be the Stolen Earth and Journey's End of for the Cybermen, but it just doesn't really work, because I don't know, there's just a lot going on. It doesn't melt, and I just thought it was disappointing, because I was really, like, I was kind of hyped for this. I thought it might be interesting. I thought they were going somewhere, and then they didn't. So, yeah. So I'm going to go with the conclusion. I'm going to put it 5, and see what happens next week. I mean, I don't think it's going to go up, because I don't think the finale is going to be any good. But, it's kind of disappointing, because I was starting to enjoy this series. I was starting to get into it, and then this sort of came along, and I was a bit disappointed. But yeah, let me know what you thought down below, in the comments section. Subscribe if you liked this video. Let me know what you thought. And yeah, like if you liked this video, and have a nice evening.